Welcome to the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, where rude mechanicals do magic. Hello, I'm Bronze Age of the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage. And I have a confession to make. I know what this is. Even worse than that, I know it's the side of it. Because in a previous life, before I was director of the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, I worked on cars for a living. I don't talk about that much these days because it leads to a lot of embarrassing questions like, will you look at my car? What do you think's wrong with it? How much will it cost? And I really thought I'd left all that behind. This is a carburetor. It's off of a 1969 Chevrolet Nova 350 two-barrel carburetor. And it started running bad. And of course, they called me up and they said, what do you think's wrong with it? I said, sounds like a fuel problem to me. And so we took the carburetor off the car, and it's over here now, and I'm going to look inside of it and see what's wrong. This is a carburetor that General Motors used for many, many years, and I've seen plenty of them. And it's known as the two-jet. I guess that means that there must be a one-jet, and there is no three-jet, I can promise you that. But basically what a carburetor does is gasoline goes in through this little hole, goes inside here, goes round and round, and comes out in here, and goes here, down into the motor. Now, I'll explain that in a little bit more detail when we get inside. But a carburetor's function is to take liquid gasoline, turn it into a very finely atomized fuel-air mixture, and give it to the engine in the right amounts. That's where your foot's connected, right there. Boom, boom, boom. So, I've got the stuff on the outside already disconnected, so I'm going to take the top off and see what's going on here. Now the first thing that you should notice, but nobody does notice, is that not all the screws are the same length. And they have to go back in the hole they came out of, or else they'll be so short they won't hold at all, or they'll be so long that they're sticking out the top of the carburetor. Worst case scenario is you try to force them down, you'll break something. And when carburetors this old, you really don't want to break anything. Parts are hard to come by. Now normally I would have what they call an overhaul kit, which has all new gaskets and seals and stuff, but this carburetor was overhauled just a few months ago. And then this problem occurred after driving it for a good bit of time. So I'm hoping that all the gaskets on the inside are still going to be good and reusable, because they do tend to get a little brittle with age. Alright, first thing up on top here, there is the float. This piece here is the needle and seat. And this should be familiar to anybody who's ever taken the tank off the top of their toilet and seen the ball that floats up and down and the valve that shuts off the water, is that when the gas pours into here from that hole in the carburetor, the float will come up and it will shut off the flow. And that is the needle and the needle and seat. There's the seat. This is the accelerator pump. More on that a little bit later. But I can't see our problem. Oh yeah, look at that. Notice a nice clean shop towel. That was what the problem was. That's what's in the carburetor. On top of that, I can look down in here. These little pieces, I don't know how well they'll focus on the camera, but those are what they call the jets. That's a carefully sized orifice that controls the maximum amount of gas that can flow through at any one time. And looking at it, I can see that one is completely plugged up with this stuff. Pull out the bigger screwdriver. And there we have the jets. I can see through one of them, but one of them is totally clogged up, which would mean that you would be running your V8 350 Chevrolet engine on 4 cylinders, and nobody likes a V4. Now we continue our exploration with this piece up here, held in with these 3 screws. Very interesting piece of modern technology. There was a guy named Bernoulli several hundred years ago. Came up with what they call Bernoulli's principle. He was the one that discovered that when air moves faster, it loses pressure. So if you can force air to go faster because it's got to go through a small passageway, the air pressure is lower. And this is what this is. A Venturi, as invented by Bernoulli and his principle. So basically what's going on here is the bowl fills up with gasoline. Gasoline goes in through the jets right here. Is air flowing through the carburetor because someone stuck their foot in it. Creates a low pressure area here. The low pressure area creates a suction which pulls the gas from down the bottom all the way up into here, and it comes out here in a fine spray. Now, it's a little more complicated than that because gas is pretty heavy by itself. It's a liquid. It doesn't move very fast. Certainly doesn't move with as fast as air does. So it's got some extra passageways, which you see all these little fine holes in here like this. That's to mix air with it as it's going through the passageways. So instead of being actually liquid gas right here, when it gets to the throttle of the carburetor, or the throttle bore, it's more of a foam. And it's easier to move. Now, get here to the bottom of it, and we have the third part of the carburetor, again with another set of screws holding it down, and a gasket that I hope comes off intact. This is the throttle body. You're sitting there at the light. You say that light turns green, you take off like that. Okay, spinning the tires and everything. Because this is what controls the speed of the engine, is the airflow through here, and your foot controls that. Now, when you're sitting there with your Venturi up here, there's no air going through the venturi. So now you've got this big space here with just air, no gasoline. So to make up for that, they have what's called the accelerator pump. This little well here in the carburetor bowl has this piece here, which when you push on your gas pedal, it plunges down in there, and it will squirt gasoline, actually liquid gasoline, not the foamy gasoline, right out these two little nozzles right here. And that will fill up that space, and so that when you open your throttle like that, your engine doesn't get a big gulp of air and just go blah. And like I said, it's called the accelerator pump. Now, the last piece of this that we got to think about is that when the throttle is closed, of course, like I said, the venturi is not sucking any air out. So how are you going to get fuel to the engine to keep it from stalling? What they do is that they run the gasoline from the bottom of the jets back up through the venturi again, and they bring it up to the top because you've got to get the gas down here to the bottom, and they don't want to let it sit so that the gasoline can leak out of the bowl into the engine. So what they have to do is bring it up over the top, and then it comes back down through passageways in the bowl to the throttle, and there are tiny little holes here where the gasoline will be exposed below the throttle. When the throttle is closed, the pressure here is very low. It's a vacuum, and that will suck the fuel out. And it doesn't atomize it very well, but it's enough. So here we have a car sitting there at idle, and as it starts to open up, the accelerator pumps a little fuel in there, and as the airflow increases, it starts sucking gas out of the venturi, and you're going down the road. Now it's time to clean this mess up and put it all back together. Back in the old days, when I worked on these things all day long, we had a 5-gallon can of stuff they called dip. It was a chemical, very, very strong solvent. Take your eyebrows off if you've been over too far. And we would take it all apart, get all the gaskets off of it, put it in this stainless steel basket and drop it in there for about 20, 30 minutes. It would come out shiny as a new dime. Well, they don't have that stuff anymore. I don't know anybody that does. It probably cost you a fortune to dispose of it after it had gotten to the point where it didn't work anymore. But for what we got right now, this stuff will work just as well. And all I want to do is make sure that all the passageways is clean, and I've gotten all this grit out of here. And I'm trying not to get this stuff in my eyes, because it stings like hell. I'm trying to get it on my camera either, for that matter. Oh yeah, more of that nasty stuff washing off. And the real puzzle about this is how it got in here, because the fuel filter in this car was in place, but apparently it was not sealing tight enough, and the gasoline with this crud in it could get all the way around it. Very unusual. Alright, I think I've got everything cleaned out. Time to put it back together. Found the three screws that went in here. And remember that each one of them had a lock washer on them. Carburation itself, as a way of running a gasoline engine, goes way back, late 1800s, about the time when they decided that gasoline was probably the best fuel for car engines. Because gasoline has one advantage over every other kind of liquid fuel, which includes diesel, kerosene, all that other kind of stuff like that, is that no matter where you go on this planet, if you have a gasoline engine, it doesn't matter if it's the South Pole or the Sahara Desert or whatever, you'll be able to get it started. If you have kerosene or diesel, it gets so cold that it basically won't burn. You have to heat it up. Gasoline will actually catch on fire and burn even down 40, 80 degrees below zero. Any place on the planet where the weather gets that cold, the gasoline will burn. And that's why throughout, as the technology developed, gasoline became the preferred fuel. A little check ball right here for the cellular pump, so that the gas only goes one way when it pumps. Put the spring on it. This is a little piece here called a power valve, and it's just a little spring-loaded valve that bypasses the jets when you really put your foot down into it, and gives you a little more extra fuel. Now the jets themselves, I've cleaned them out. They're just little brass orifices. And if you look at them with a magnifying glass, you can actually see little numbers on them, and they'll tell you what size that hole is. Because they're very precisely machined. Back in the old hot rod days, you hear about guys talking about rejetted their carburetor. And that was usually the way you could tell somebody didn't have any idea what they were talking about. Because while if you had a jet with a bigger hole in it, yes, you would run richer, which meant to burn more gas. But the only time it actually made a difference was when your throttle was wide open. So if you were drag racing, a situation where you just push it to the floor and you hold it down until you get to the other end of the racetrack, yeah, bigger jets would help you. But as for making a difference out on the street, probably not a lot. But there were plenty of people who had all kinds of ideas of how carburetors worked, and most of them had no idea what they were talking about. Got these little sleeves that go back in here. Carburetors are one thing where you really don't want to have any parts left over when you're putting it back together. gotten the screw in the wrong place. It goes over here in the middle. And they look so much alike. It's easy to get them confused. There we go. That works better. Sounds like we've got company. But I don't have to worry about answering the door around here. I've got somebody else does that for me. Now, we've got our needle and our float. And looking at this, I can see pretty well that it's pretty clean. Not much to see there. And this little pin is held in place by the sides of the carburetor bowl when you put it back together, so there's no clips or pins or screws or anything. And I don't have my float gauge, so I'm just going to eyeball it and think that looks pretty good. Don't want to lose this piece. Because you can't put it back on after you've got the carburetor back together. You have to take the carburetor back apart again. It may look grubby on the outside, but it's clean on the inside. And I'll hand it back off to the owner of this 1969 Chevrolet Nova 350. And I'm sure he'll be back on the road in no time, running much better than he was. Now that we got this stuff out of his carburetor. So, this is Bronze Age for the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, asking you please don't tell people I used to work on cars, because it just leads to those questions. I'll be back working on chandeliers and dresser drawers and table legs and stuff like that soon enough. So thank you for sticking through this video, something I thought I'd never have to do again. And it'd be very nice if you'd like and subscribe. Share it if you'd like to. And I hope to see you in the next video. So, thank you very much.